This is season 3. I am so happy to be here at my favorite number, and I am ready to make this your favorite season yet. We've made some exciting changes based on the feedback from our audience. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts on how we can make things better. We're gonna push to make this one bigger and better than ever. More intentional conversations, better visuals, because yes, this podcast does have a visual version live on YouTube, and better audio for your ears to love on all streaming platforms. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know what you love about the show and what you think we can do better. And please remember to share this with your friends and family. Enjoy the episode. We're good? Oh, you're rolling. Cool. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Just a bit like no warning. Well, thank you guys for being here so much. I really do appreciate it. It's a pleasure to sit across from both of you. Just met you guys recently. It's been like how long? Couple months, maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is my second time even seeing you guys.
That's true. That's even crazier.
In a setting, which is wild. But we've been like, in correspondence for so long. So, for people who don't know at home, this is Jess and this is Leslie. They are both the co-founders of el3ment, an application that we will be talking about a lot today. Thank you guys for being here again. Just to get a bit more information about who these two wonderful individuals are. Jess is a co-founder of el3ment, a Philadelphia native, and therefore, not surprisingly, a huge Philadelphia everything fan.
Woo, go Eagles! No.
Go. Especially when it comes to sports, as you can see. Jess played soccer at Penn State, and through succeeding on and off the field as an academic All-American, was offered a Nike internship in Beaverton, Oregon. That's pretty cool. We'll get to that. Leslie is a co-founder of el3ment as well, and a music enthusiast. A Cleveland native, Leslie moved to New York City in 2010 to attend college and play soccer at New York University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology. Post-college, Leslie was a part of Nike's brand marketing team for the East Territory before moving to a creative agency, The Robot Co. I'm assuming you guys met.
We met at Nike.
Through Nike?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That seems like cool. And after that, they co-founded el3ment together. And el3ment drives discovery, connection, and collaboration across the global music landscape through a mobile application. el3ment's music matchmaking technology enables users to find their perfect sonic match, and features like in-app chat translation, streamline international collaboration. Since its launch in fall 2021, el3ment's global music community boasts members from 49 different countries. Yes. The el3ment app is so cool. It is so incredibly smooth. It looks amazing.
Glad you think so.
It feels great. Like yesterday, I think I had somebody from, I think it was Mexico City. They reached out. Nice. They were just like, hey, you down to collaborate? And I was like, this is so, and I could just hear their music right then and there, and I can know the vibe immediately and just understand what's going, like that is so impressive and it's so fun. And I will say that when I first entered the app, with applications in general, especially applications that are like startups, things that are just beginning, I'm always expecting a ton of bugs. Like I'm just, let me just write down what's going on. Let me monitor to see there were no bugs that I experienced while using the app.
Wow. Good. Knock on wood.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Which is crazy. That is unheard of. Like for me, at least. Yeah. Like I work for Apple. I don't know should I say that? I work for Apple, and they use an application for scheduling. Yep. It is the worst application that I've ever used in my entire life, and it's local. So like, there's not that many people that are using that. Well, there's a lot of people, but like it's not like a social media platform. It's very simple, but it's so slow. It's so laggy. It boots up and it takes 5 minutes for it to go into the app to see my scheduling. And then I go to yours and I'm just like, easy.
Boom.
Now I'm in Mexico.
Like, Alan is the guy who created or helped you guys create the app, correct? Is he the brain behind the...
He helped on the technical side. Leslie and I have marketing backgrounds, so we are not technical people. So Alan really did help spearhead what you see today, the product today.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I guess just to go from close to the beginning, how did you guys actually meet? Like, what was that interaction like? Just because I'm curious. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, I think we officially first met in New York. Leslie was just becoming an were you even in Econ at the time, or you were like, there was a big week it was called Nike Women's Week. It was a pretty new concept. Yeah. And it was just a bunch of different events throughout New York. And I, at the time, was working on the agency side, like experiential marketing, but Nike was one of my biggest clients. And I think we first met there, like very hi, hello.
Okay.
Through a mutual friend. Yeah. And then we like further met in San Francisco when we ran a half marathon together, which was my first half marathon, but Leslie had just finished a full marathon and then dipped into a back-to-back half marathon.
In hindsight, bad decision making.
But we definitely that was kind of the beginning of our relationship, and then kept in touch. I hadn't even moved to, I wasn't even officially at Nike at that time. I was trying to be the job that she had, which was Econ, which is like the coolest job at Nike. And then I moved to Portland, and then it wasn't until I moved to the New York office where we became probably like way closer and bonded over music for sure.
Nice.
And then we're trying to figure out like, should we do entertainment marketing, which at Nike is not really what we wanted to do in entertainment marketing. So I had gone over to the creative agency, the Robot Company, and there were a few music opportunity or clients, I guess, like Beats like and Sprite. And I was like, dude, come over here. You'll like it. Nice. And I did.
There you go. What is the Robot Company? What is that?
It's now part of the Spring Hill Company, and it was always under that sort of like umbrella. So it was like the brand strategy / creative agency that's under LeBron and his business partner, Maverick Carter. So they had two other companies that were LA based, one that was like Cleveland / Akron based, and then Robot was out here. So it was very similar in terms of like the type of work we did, like brand strategy, marketing. It was more like entertainment, influencer marketing, but it was such a smaller company. It was 13, 14 people. So we were able to do a lot. We're basically every hat and awesome. Get a lot of like really core experiences really that then like helped us start our own company.
You both played soccer in college. Was that like you met after that? And how it's just funny to see the list of the way you guys got to where you are, because it's like pretty similar,
like parallel experience,
soccer, sure. Nike, Robot, Element, like it's pretty cool. So what made you both, I guess this might be different for both of you, but like what made you go from playing soccer in college, which is like that's collegiate, that's pretty professional, like if you think about when people go to school for something and you go to school for sports, you're playing sports, you know, you're really playing. What made you go from soccer to then thinking about like branding and doing this kind of thing? Like, or what was that transition like, or why?
It kind of happened, at least for me, like pretty organically. So obviously soccer was like a huge part of my life. I always think back and think like soccer and music were two of like the bigger, I think, like driving forces in terms of like anything I did. And with soccer, playing through college, I actually started working at Nike while I was still in college, like on the retail side. So I worked at the running door on the Upper East Side while I was still playing soccer. And then just being kind of like involved in the ecosystem there, like found out more about like what other roles looked like. I actually had an experience when I was studying abroad in my junior year. I was over in Australia, and there was like a big Nike sponsored event, and it was actually done like through their women's team, and it was a 10K, and it was like the first time I had actually run like an organized race before. Soccer, you're like running and training, but it was never like training for a race in particular. And that experience was just like amazing. It was a race at night. It was like 6,000 women in the park and like all of this like cool stuff going on. So I came back and was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. Like I felt so like, that's like what's next for me. Like that's like on my path. And that's when I started working at the Nike store that they had just opened up on the Upper East Side, and just wanted to get more in that lane, like figuring out like, how do I create experiences like that? How can I like put myself in those places again? And then it kind of just like snowballed from there.
And you just like climbed the ladder.
And I just like got involved as much as I could.
Retail, right?
Yep.
That's impressive to go from retail to then starting to work for like the actual, like the corporate
like
side
on the brand
of things,
side.
which is like, that's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks. I was lucky.
Anything Leslie says she's going to do, she ends up doing. So that's how I know Element will be successful.
Yes, like, I love meeting those kinds of people, for sure.
She's like, this, I'll do this next. And then she does.
That's awesome. Wow. That's really cool.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was obsessed with soccer growing up. It's the only thing I thought about. It's the only thing I did. I like didn't, I wasn't academic by any means until after school. after college,
Yeah.
where I like picked up a book and actually read it. I was just, that's all I ever did. And I didn't even know or think about business or like the context of what Nike could be as a company.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, we actually played Portland one year and we got to tour the Nike campus. Wow. And it was like, it's like Disneyland for athletes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't realize, I mean, you wear all the products,
Yeah.
but you don't know the people behind that brand.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't understand that it's like a massive establishment. And then
Huge.
you can get jobs there. And I was like, oh my God, like you can work for Nike? Like, that's insane. So after that trip, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I got offered to apply for the internship and ended up getting it, and then was on campus for 3 months right after I graduated. I was like, this is cool. Amazing. But I didn't want to live in Portland. So I left the internship, came back east, started experiential marketing, but Nike being a huge client, and then always had the idea or hope to go back to the corporate side. Yeah.
That is actually so cool. Why music? Because in that realm, with Nike and all of the companies that you work for and with, all of the clients, there are so many branches that you could go off into. And you guys were pretty close, and it seems like you're pretty connected to the world of like athletes, like athleticism and stuff like that. Especially being with Nike. Why did you end up choosing to connect to the music industry and like work there?
I guess like several reasons. I mean, one of them I think is just like personal passion there. Like even when it comes to like us becoming really close friends, like when we started hanging out, it was like we were going to concerts I think like every weekend. Different random like basement concert. Like we just like, that's honestly what really like brought us together as friends and as partners. So that was like that was like the foundation of like our relationship. And I think it's just like music is like the universal connector. And like, yes, sports, but that kind of varies like country to country and like place to place. And as far as like an emotive connection, for me, at least personally, like sports doesn't have that like, you know, music, we always say like transcends like language, location. And it's really one thing that's like the connective tissue and like is universal and brings us all together. So I think based on that, we always just really had a personal passion for it, as well as having a lot of friends that were musicians and in the space and like asking us for help and support, which is what got us to start Element.
When we were at LeBron's company, we just admire the ethos that he's more than an athlete. And they built a team around him to build him up as a brand off court and now $1 billion business. And we were like, we should do that for musicians because labels, they don't really care about artist development anymore. It's about like the top, you know, hits and the song, not the album and not the person. And like, you know, but arguably if you do that for a musician and you're starting to see it, like you can expand globally, first of all, but you also are not like seasonal. Like an athlete is seasonal. It's a seasonal sport. You have injury. It's just not as common, and you can have like a longer career as a musician, and there's so many different avenues that you can touch outside of just sport. And that's kind of where we took the insight to first make Element, which was more of a consulting agency for independent musicians.
That started as a consulting agency. Oh, that is so cool.
Just
that's so fascinating.
Redid the model for our friends. But yeah, I mean, our tagline is meet people who speak music because we just think that it's the common connector for everything. And you're starting to see that even more broadly in like gaming. There'll be way more music in fashion, like everything you need a soundtrack to.
For sure. I don't know about you, but also I like can think of very specific points in my life that are like defined by the music I was listening to at that period. Like it's such I don't know.
When I first moved to New York, from Florida, Orlando, Florida, so we didn't experience seasons. So there was no summer into fall, into winter, into spring, into summer. It was just like summer into a cold fall. Not even. Do leaves even change over there in Florida?
Probably not.
Not even. So summer into like a cold spring, and then you go back into summer. And we have like a winter, but there's nothing that says winter except for it's like sometimes 40 degrees and it doesn't go below that. So when I first came to New York, I remember like experiencing my first winter, I was listening to Daniel Caesar's Freudian, and that was my whole winter soundtrack for the entire winter. And now every time I listen to that album or any songs from it, I think about my first winter in New York. And I never had that experience back home because I never had the environmental element to connect my music to. It would, if there was something happening in the world and I was listening to something specific, then maybe that's like 2016 was a wild year in a lot of ways. But I remember a few albums, so like Views was that year. So like I can think about the year and maybe what happened within that year, you know, in culture and like, you know, current events and stuff, but never a feeling. Yeah. It's always just like ideas that popped up, but like that was my first, and I was just like, I didn't know that was a thing. It was like a reintroduction to what music can be, what it is in a lot of different places depending on where you are.
I think actually you hit on an interesting point for the future, which is with where AI is going, where technology is going. I think in not maybe a few years, maybe the next 10, it's obviously going to open up mass creation opportunities. So people who didn't think they were musicians are now musicians. But by the ability to relate a feeling to a computer and that computer spit things back at you, I think that we can get to a place where you don't have to create the content because you can say, I'm in a scene and it looks like X, and the computer is going to make that for you. And then you're going to sing and create through AI your own music, and you've just made a music video within, I don't know, 10 minutes versus having to go to the location, hire all the people to shoot. Like you can just create. Obviously, it's going to be on the creator if that's good or not. But I think the tools coming out, you'll be able to do that by feeling. And I think the same way that people will receive music with this, you know, smart speakers and everything, they'll say, I'm in the kitchen. Like, I want cooking music. And whatever those algorithms start to become to make cooking music, it's going to identify to you so personally that you'll just be able to say, I want to listen to X feeling instead of an album or a song.
Do you think feeling music is the same for everyone? Like
no,
if I want to feel like pump up music, do you think my music's the same as yours?
No, I think it's...
So sorry.
It's okay.
It was
oh no. Is it my scarf?
No, it was...
I think it will be so customized that it's almost going to understand your day. Like you're going to wake up and it's going to say, Leslie meditates in the morning. So it's going to be Zen for the first 3 hours of her day. And then she's going to get into like work mode, and that's going to be a different thing. And then knowing that you go to the gym at like 4 p.m. or I'm going out tonight, play my going out music. I think the playlist will become so curated, especially with like machine learning capabilities and algorithms just getting so much stronger with more people bringing music to the world, because that's literally why I built the app too. You go on to Spotify, top mainstream whatever, but your algorithms aren't like, they're as strong as they can be. But if you think about the countries that aren't even from an infrastructure perspective set up to stream music yet, like regional parts of Mexico, regional parts of Africa, like really unique sounds that can come, and they're very localized. Like the community there will know about them, but we might not. For us, we believe the emerging markets are the next players in music, and it will become less westernized. But our hope is that, you know, if you're making music from Ghana, you don't have to live in London. You can stay in Ghana, create your music, and by using el3ment, collaborate with people around the world and have your music travel, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay.
And to talk a little bit about the AI aspect of things, because you mentioned that, and that's an interesting perspective, because I think there's a lot of currently there's like a lot of fear in the space of creators that they inhabit, that they will start to lose their creative opportunities or their outlets to be creative because of AI. Do you think that there is do you think that they live in separate places and they can't replace one another, or do you feel like it's just going to allow for I guess, what's your perspective? Because the way you speak on it, it sounds like really wonderful. Like I never heard it in a positive light, or I don't hear that often. So I guess and we don't have to dwell on this too much, but I'm just curious, because that's an interesting perspective that I haven't heard of yet.
Yeah. Oh, I think technology can do so much good. It's always the person that's using the technology. Okay. Yeah. And so I think like a lot of negativity comes into that space, which is fear. But if you use it, it's more supplemental, and I think that's where it will help enhance your creative abilities and open up like a wider range of assets that will be available to you to make your music better. But I think it's always going to depend on the creator. Because I'm never going to make music like you're going to make music. My music will be really shitty and no one will listen. But you already have that like in you. So by having the the AI or anything, like the tools to help you will just make it better, easier, faster.
It's like another plugin that we can use to.
So I don't think it will take away.
That's a good way to put it.
But no, I do. No, I agree. I think it's like supplementary in that it's like you said, it's giving you like more avenues to create and like more tools in your toolbox. Like we know someone that's used the AI, more like image generating AI to make visualizers for their music. They can just say like, I want images of like the forest and 4,000 images of like forestry pop in. And then there's like a moving image of a tree that takes like over 2 minutes. So it can be like cool and supplementary like that. I think it's definitely based on like how people use it, but also how people are creating it. So I think it also has to deal with like, not even the intention of the people making the technology, because I think normally like the intention is good and pure. But there's a lot of like biases that go into it, and a lot of times, if it is created as like not necessarily a tool for creators, but a way to like replace them, or like we don't need to work with musicians because now we have this like robot to do it. I don't think that's the way. I think music and like art in general is always going to like have a human element to it. It can't be like all auto generated or it's like not really art. So I think there's always going to be that like emotional side of it and like artistic side of it that cannot be replaced, but if it's made in like the right way and with the right intent can be like a massive unlock.
So we talk about it with live music too, because to tour it's costs so much money. And there's little return on investment unless you are a massive stadium artist, right? And you're touring around the world.
Yeah, for sure.
But the computers can help supplement that again, where now you can do, and I think this fits really well into the creator economy, is you as a musician have your super fans and you are unlocking for them live experiences. But if I'm not a super fan of you and I still am a fan, I can still access you maybe through live stream, or maybe you're like, you hate performing live. Maybe you have social anxiety and you don't like it.
I know a lot of those.
Yeah, like you can have the avatars start to perform and it's just this whole different experience. I actually got to go to Megan Thee Stallion concert in VR. And it was the most like twerking inside of my eyeballs.
I love that.
It was really insane. It was so cool, and and it's still so early. So I can only imagine if I'm seeing like one of my favorite artists and I'm sat at home, and it's not just, I mean, I think yes, we're really early and you wear the Oculus and it's heavy and it's uncomfortable, but there is still a way of engagement, because there's going to be people that love live music and you'll never want to give that up. I don't think that will ever go away.
Yeah,
right?
It's different. It's like, it's the idea of like movies and what theater was back then, the plays. We still do theater because there's nothing like being there in front of that person to see them.
Exactly. But you still have this other revenue access. Source that is huge for musicians that can't tour.
Yes.
And when we our app is in 49 countries. One of them is Saudi Arabia. Wow. Saudi Arabia has trouble traveling because their visas are expensive or their passports aren't accepted in every country. Yes. This is a way for them to share their music.
Outside of revenue too, just visibility, like being able to get into these places that you couldn't really get to before.
And kind of to touch back on like, there'll always be a human element to it.
For sure.
We try to speak to our community all the time, and any new features that we're creating is alongside them, because we are not going to be the musician. We're not musicians, so we're not going to. But it's very important to us that any tech that we create comes from a variety of people in all types of music creation, but also from all over the world, because that's where that bias then is separated.
And in this talk about like tools and features, and you guys have, you guys are obviously technologically savvy and like really into that. It's really, I love that, because that's me, and I appreciate all the conversations. You guys actually have a language feature where you can translate your messages if you're speaking to someone from a different country that speaks a different language. That is incredible. That is so. I don't even know. Does Apple have in the messaging app where you can like it translates the text for you when you send it off?
I don't know if it recently does, but I know that like that just started with Instagram. I think people are starting to catch on. Yeah,
I don't think native Apple though.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also like you can only translate, the caption. It's somewhat helpful,
and
but
it's also
not great.
Caption translating
Yeah.
is
It's
really
not
weird.
great.
It looks
Not
so
good.
janky.
Yeah.
It's never accurate, which is hilarious.
True.
That's a really cool feature that I think speaks to the beauty of the platform, is like the accessibility.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're going to be in different countries, they're speaking different languages naturally.
Yeah.
And that's so cool too, because it speaks to also what you promote, which is the language of music, which is the fact that we can get you translated this initial barrier. You can get past this barrier by using this application, and then you can speak the language you both know fluently together, because there's no barrier there that you can just do that.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a barrier. We obviously, like, Element is built for connection, collaboration. But one of the insights that sort of like informed us developing the app was realizing how important international collaboration is, especially for independent artists, and you're looking to grow your fan base, and maybe you don't have like the A&R resources to actually connect with other artists from these areas. And back when we had the consulting agency, there was one artist we worked with who started to see some of their fans in Brazil and asked us, like, hey, can you find me an artist in Brazil that's like at my level to work with and collaborate with? And like they obviously inherently knew like that would be beneficial for them. That'd be a great way for them to tap into some Brazilian fans, get their music out there more. And that was so hard to do. Like we went to like Spotify, YouTube, hours spent. And when we finally got an artist that felt like it was a good fit, like huge language barrier. We needed to find a translator. So it was like, it just made it so, it was such a great idea. And it was, we hit blockers like every single step of the way. And a lot of that is actually like what informed us making Element. So even if you look at international collaborations, it's now just starting to see like 2 or 3 languages on any track. And it's becoming like less important that you speak the same language as long as the music is good. So that was one of the goals, is just like knocking down that barrier too.
That is so cool. And it's really inspiring too, because one thing that I'm sure you guys have thought of or experienced is that the Western, like you were saying, the Western music, in terms of like just the fact that the English language is so widespread and is taught in so many different countries, it's so easy for international, or for our artists to become international, for our celebrities to become international, because there's very little language barrier, because people learn English. And the people, they get so big to a certain level where it's like some of those people that speak different languages, they don't really mind it, because they have translation services that make it so that they can access those really big artists and still enjoy their music. And a lot of the people from over there don't even care that they don't understand the words sometimes. They just really love the music. And I want that to be reciprocated. It'd be really cool to hear bigger artists on other tracks that don't speak English, that are adding their own flavor to those tracks and making it so that those artists can become international as well, because it's like, it's a very westernized media landscape. That's how it's been for a very long time. And I was gonna ask about this, but you guys have already been answering my questions. Is like, what gaps do you think Element is gonna fill? And you just answered it with that story there. It filled like 12 gaps that you guys had to experience yourselves. And that's really cool that that's what inspired the application. Besides language, the language barrier, and the getting other artists from different countries on your tracks, are there any other gaps that you see in the industry that you feel like is the Element's going to do a good job of filling? Also, the follow question is, are there any gaps that you feel like you see that you're unsure that Element can fill it, but you would want it to? Is there anything that's like, is there like a goal that you have? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we actually recently just got back from a trip to Mexico and South Korea. We have partners kind of in both. And I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but we've identified certain territories or countries, and specifically cities in those countries, that we feel are global movers in music, or early adopters to technology. And that's right now we're heavily focused on Latin America. And now expansion into Asia starts with Seoul.
That's awesome.
We had a really interesting insight where we were speaking to independent musicians, one in Seoul, who is A&Ring a project, and he's a creative director for one of an independent agency's labels out there. He's like, we want to get out of Korea. We want to meet other musicians. And coming from Mexico, we actually had met musicians there that were trying to get into Korea, which you can imagine is really tough to get into Korea.
I can't imagine, especially from
the language side is just like, gosh, where do you start? Because you think about Korea, and we recently think about Korea because of BTS, right? And they've done an amazing job of putting them on the map.
Of course.
But we think about the music that way, these big idol groups. But there's a huge independent market there. Yeah. It's just like, how do you tap in? And we're starting to see a trend where these idol groups are actually not going to re-sign their contracts because they can understand, I'm already massive on my own. Yeah. Why do I need to do this and be told what to do every day? Problem is, they get into that system when they're like 13 years old. So how are they going to find the next producer that their A&R person, their team's not like, here's, so
here's it all.
People, so it's a perfect opportunity for us to be a little bit disruptive in that market and open those doors. But one of the insights that we got was, cool, you guys connect from Mexico City and Seoul. We tried to make that connection. The way that royalties is split is different per country.
True.
And so
that's
we're trying to identify that gap. And so we have some ideas for technology that would actually do that. And that would be huge for the independent musicians that either can't afford lawyers or don't know how to distribute music or want to work from Japan to Mexico to Saudi Arabia. Yeah. How are they all going to split the music? So we've started to do that work. We're excited for some of those updates to come where facilitation actually can happen. And we'll see kind of how that will be adopted. But we're excited for that because that can open a massive opportunity for people worldwide.
Yeah.
That's huge. That feels like that's not even something that I would think about. And I'm sure every artist would feel this way. It's so exciting to get the opportunity to speak to someone like that and to go somewhere else to make that music, to virtually visit and create something. There's almost, this is like creative brain. It's like when you get to the back end, you're like, oh my gosh, like what if this like for some reason blows up and there's all this money sitting around and we distribute it online and you can't really like there's probably not the clearest split on Spotify or any DistroKid or any kind of distributing applications that makes it so that it's easy to kind of like distribute in different countries. Like that's a whole thing that could just like crash a relationship. You make one song together, you can't figure it out at the end of the day, and then you just never work together again. And that's such a wild thing to think about. And I'm glad that you said that because I'm sure a lot of people now are going to be thinking about that. Like, how am I going to distribute and do it properly? And I think that what that also opens the door to is it gives it more leeway to the bigger artists, like you said, that aren't going to sign again, that want that access but have such a large pool that if they drop a song, they make money off the song, but they can't drop with anyone because there's always going to be issues there. And like you said, people can't afford lawyers. And that's just a beautiful thing to hear. So language, currency, we got those two down. Yeah, that's good. Or we're working on the second one, but we're pretty set on that. That's really that's really cool. How long did it take to make that app?
There were several phases. One was just like our initial like brainstorming phase, which included just like Post-it notes everywhere and like constant whiteboarding and like pages ripped out of notebooks. And that lasted a few months. And then it was like January 2021 that we started finding some people to support us from the tech side. Like we got the idea like vaguely down. Like, okay, here's what we want to do, and found some people to come in and support. So in terms of like actual development before we launched, I think it was about like 6 or 7 months, but including all of the work going into it ahead, probably like a little over a year from like initial concept to launch. And launch was like October of last year. So now it's been another year.
That's so cool. It's great to see it go another year. Wow, that's beautiful. And just to speak on it, to go to the next part of this, because you came to New York, and the reason why, for people who don't know, the reason why we know you both is because I think you guys reached out to us as Project Feel, or how did we even make that connection? I don't even know how that happened.
We met at that launch party. When the app first launched October of last year. Connected with Anthony. We held it at Safe and Sound, so it was like a full circle event. Yeah.
Yes, I remember now. Yes. Oh, I forgot that even happened.
We connected with Anthony, and I think Ryan had posted a music video in an Eagles top, so I was like, who this guy?
I can't.
Let's go.
And I loved it. And I was like, dude, their content is sick.
Wait, which song was it?
He's sitting on a stoop. I don't know.
Sitting on a stoop. Was it? I've direct.
I was going to say,
I've done most of his videos.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
You're the reason we connected. I loved it. And we were just shooting around ideas of like, who should we work with? We want to bring, this camp together, but we also want to have content come out of it.
For sure.
And we talked to Anthony a little bit too about like other stuff we could do in the past, but it was never the right thing.
And it just felt like our values and kind of just company like mission and everything aligned, and we're like, we like to work with good people, and
for sure.
Content's amazing.
That's awesome. That's a really cool connection to make, because in my brain I was still trying to make that direct connection, but that's great to hear. Off of that relationship, we then had the idea, you guys had the idea to put on a writing camp. So essentially what your idea was that we bring together a bunch of artists from that local area, wherever you were at the time, and you use the Element app to find some more artists. We bring them together, have them in a space for a certain amount of time to create music together and to collaborate and make it happen. And we have what is it, 9 tracks? We have 9 tracks that were completed from that. Filmed the documentary. We documented the entire experience, and that's coming out soon. Why that idea with the writing camp, and why bringing artists in like that? What was the goal for that?
So I guess like at the core of it all, like Element is obviously a digital platform built for like connection and collaboration. But with any digital community, we feel like it's still very important to have these like in real life touch points and bring people together and just share like, the connection is great on the app, but you're still going to create music off of the app and off of the platform. And we felt like this was one really unique opportunity. We had a strong community in New York already since the launch party and connecting with more musicians and kind of seeing that community grow. We wanted an experience that brought the platform to life, and people who hadn't connected on the app were connecting in person, and now they're still connecting on the app, and Wanya and Dane are like making music on their own. So
cool.
It was really just a moment for us to showcase like all of the benefits of the app and like why you would want to be part of it and do something great for our community.
And it could have been an absolute bust.
It could have been a flop.
We were a little bit nervous. We were like, shit, half of the crew knows each other, the others
half don't.
Just like strangers.
Who knows? Will we get one song? Like, we'll get a documentary. It will either be
will
really
be good.
awkward or like, it'll be great.
It'll be fun to watch on our own time.
Such like a shock, because we just didn't, we went in with no expectations, and it just exceeded all of those expectations. Awesome. And as you know, like vibe amazing, no egos, great music came out of it.
For sure.
Energy,
it was just, and we hope to replicate it. We hope to keep it going internationally.
Yeah, that's what's exciting for
me. And that also could be a complete bust.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. I think the beauty of it is that there's no certainty in those situations.
Exactly.
And that's, as an artist, that's the toughest thing to deal with, is that adversity.
Yeah.
And I had multiple people that were saying afterwards, and within interviews and stuff, they're just saying like, I wasn't gonna go. I was really nervous and I didn't want to do it because I didn't feel comfortable, or I didn't feel confident in my own. And every single person there was able to succeed in one way or the other, and able to show their talent individually as a human, and then alongside all of the other people as well. And shout out to Safe and Sound Studios as well for
thank you
hosting us that day. Beautiful space. If you're in New York and you need a studio, that's where you go.
That is.
But yeah, and internationally, like, how do you see that even happening? Because that's tough to put on. Especially because you're going to be going to places, and I'm sure you've met a lot of people out there, so you know a lot of artists, but it's still going to be an interesting experience to have all of those people pull in together. And with personalities, with individuals, especially artists, sometimes things can collide in a way that is dangerous for some people. So how do you feel like, how are you going to push it forward and do all of that stuff? That sounds
it will truly test our entire hypothesis of like, can global collaboration, what is the power behind it? Obviously the digital, you kind of can hide behind the phone, but bringing people together, we really want to show that it transcends language and cultures and location. Even at the one that we threw, like, everyone had different backgrounds, different genres, different styles, and it worked. But what was really nice out of that camp was we got a lot of recognitions from brands and sync opportunities, and just has opened up Element as an offering that we're excited to give back to our community, because we're starting like this matchmaking technology. And it's interesting because if we had probably done it before camp, like if we compared all of you guys through this system, I wonder how many would be like, oh, they're most similar.
Most compatible.
Yeah. But we also kind of, I mean, that was like a whole different tangent of kind of that business. But I think that opportunity really showed a light of like, there's an amazing group of independent talent out here, and you don't need to spend $1 million to do like have Travis Scott be your campaign. There's you know, you can localize talent. You can, one of the things we're excited about is bring opportunities from international talent to the States, because that's where all, if you think about like the industry's beginnings, it was the US, it was Japan, and it was the UK, because they had the largest GDPs at the time, and back in the day it was like, who can afford to buy our CDs?
And now manufacture them too.
Now it's not about that, because streaming eliminated that, and now it's about the emerging markets. The emerging markets aren't really set up economically to support their own selves, right? What we can do is provide them opportunities now to get paid, and that is such a nice thing for us to be able to. That's like one of our favorite give backs. Is wonderful. Cool. This, we actually, in our last sync, we had someone from Korea, 2 people from Mexico, that we briefed in. And they were like, whoa, how, you know, they're not going to get these opportunities just anywhere. And that's something that from that camp, like, showed a lot of light on what Element talent is. And that talent pool, we want to keep. It's invite only, the app, as you know, or application based, but we're not opening it up too broadly, because we want the level of musicianship and professionalism to remain high. And we want the people from the community that are currently in to invite their peers. And that is the way that we think collaboration can really work and grow this independent community much stronger worldwide. Will we eventually open it up one day? Like, yeah, maybe, because we don't know if the next kid from India just releasing music is going to be the next, you know, Justin Bieber. We don't know, but we are working on some technologies there to make sure that like it's safe, and that there's matchmaking. You will find people that are at your level or that you're searching for. And same for the companies, like they can kind of give us reference, and we scrape it against our community and say, based off of these sound attributes, these are the best artists from an independent perspective that you should reach out to directly. So useful. So it's helping like the search process overall, but from a global space, which is another gap that we're trying to fill, is like that sync opportunity is huge.
And that's a massive industry. And there are a lot of companies that do it, but it's difficult for those companies, because they have to not only meet the needs, but they also have to amass the talent and manage that talent in certain ways. And just getting artists that can make music for these opportunities on a constant basis is, I've seen it firsthand with, you know, the friends that I have that do sync music and work for a sync company. That's a constant gig, and sometimes it bears no fruit. So to have it so that the access is easier, you get more people in, more opportunities for someone to make a really good track for the company as well. They get all of these artists that fit their mold, that can create something unique in every way, and all of those artists, there's very little risk for them to create that track. They're just there. They get reached out to. They're like, okay, let me just make this real quick, see how it goes. And I think that's a really, like, they don't have to be too associated, you know, they don't have to be working for a company to get that kind of gig. They can just get that kind of gig, which is huge. That's like a whole, that's employment. You know, that's at the end of the day, that's people making money that otherwise wouldn't be
for sure
making money at all, or having any opportunity to even see music money, you know?
And that's such like a tenet of Element, is providing that access. So like on the one hand, it's taking away the like segmentation of the global music industry, but also giving access to these independent musicians who, like, if you're not part of one of those companies, or if you don't have a label, you probably aren't getting those chances. So just kind of evening the playing field.
What are some of the ways that you, as Element and as both of you individually, what are some of the ways that you reach out globally? Because that's tough to just go to a different country and just network. I don't know how you even like manage that. So what are some of the ways that you guys reach out and like touch those communities? Because I'm glad you guys say what you say about, you know, the importance of the physical community, not just the virtual community. What's that even like? I don't know.
We have been fortunate that like our networks from Nike and LeBron have opened up a lot of contacts for us. One individual that we worked with at the Nike office, his job was literally to go around to key cities in the world and find the next influencers and tastemakers and bring them into Nike.
Not a bad job.
Wow.
So we piggyback off of him a lot. We
Yeah.
partner with him,
Yeah.
and he has established some great connections for us that we otherwise wouldn't be able to tap into. And for us, it's important to localize everything we do. We don't want to be an American company that just comes in and is like, this app is in English and you have to deal with it. No,
Yeah.
we've translated the app in Spanish fully across multiple Spanishes.
Yeah.
So that there's one that's
Yeah.
kind of, for everybody. We'll do the same in certain other territories. So Korean will probably be next. We're excited to bring on Brazil with Portuguese, which is a massive market.
Oh my God.
But we have him help us through that space.
Nice.
Who are the key independent musicians? Who are the key brands and the sync contacts, etc. And then we kind of go on these foundational trips where we meet everybody. We talk to them about Element, our vision, our mission, everything that, kind of our community to date. And we work hard to maintain those relationships, but we also try to hire partners then in those territories.
Yeah.
To
Okay. That
keep
makes sense.
establishment
Yeah.
of visibility, what events should we be showing up at, how can kind of, Element continue to sustain and grow there, because we can't be
Everywhere all at
Can't
once,
be everywhere,
unfortunately.
yeah. So he's really, really helped with that. And then, just
Honestly,
the
personal
musicians
outreach too. People that we've been able to connect with personally, musicians that we know. Even when I think of Korea and Che, those are, or our old IEC people. I think a big part of it is honestly not being afraid to just reach out. A lot of our early work was just hey, we think you're a great musician from wherever, can we promote you on social media? Just really like your track. So really just discovering as much as we can, reaching out, talking to people one-on-one, that's the best way and the most organic. And then of course our partners who can help us just bridge those gaps even more.
That's beautiful. And naturally, when you tap in with someone who's a part of that community, they naturally kind of tap you into what's going on in that space. Which is really cool. It makes me excited to go back on the app to meet those people, because there's so much. That's one door that is so huge when you can meet a person from that place, somebody that is actually tapped into that community and knows about that space. And I think that what the cool thing is that I feel like that's going to bring back the importance of those communities, because it's I come from Orlando, and I've been thinking about this more often, and I'm hearing the sentiment more often as well from people who are from Orlando. It's a city that's still developing, and it doesn't have all of the history behind it in terms of the arts community. So the culture is kind of missing. The culture is kind of lost. And I remember growing up there and just not knowing who I was, because there was nothing for me to tap into except for, thank God for the internet, tapped into the cultures from around the world and around the country, because that's, it was westernized. So I was able to tap into the culture like New York and really find connection there. So when I came here, it felt like home because of how tapped in I was already and how that was East Coast, I think that's going to make it so that when you interact with the community through an individual, it's going to be important for that individual. One of the markers for a good collaboration is going to be how connected are they to that community that they live in. How many other artists do they know that can be connected to the situation? Who else do they know that can fill the gaps that we need depending on the project that we're working on? It'd be really cool to see this in Orlando too. I'm really interested.
Help us get it there.
I'm really interested to see how the artists from Orlando would react to something like this, because it's so hard to find people there. There are very few shows going on where it's this is a show from an artist from Orlando, and it'd be really interesting to see that.
Do you have a favorite artist from Orlando?
There's a few. I think one of my favorite, which I hope he's still making music, but his name is Sita.
Okay.
His music is just so dope. He's super low key. He's not even I don't know how active he is right now, but some of his music is. And also the most active person I know that's really making waves is his name is Jason Channel.
Okay.
He's opening up for Coda and different cities and stuff like that, and he's a wild ball of energy that's really intoxicating. So he'd definitely be someone that I also
check
support.
them out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, please.
We actually we've been toying with this idea. We haven't implemented it yet, but as people do travel, they're getting out there now.
Yeah.
COVID.
We're outside again.
Yeah, we're outside again. And
Outside.
we want the element community as they travel to know that there is a community there, right? And one way is to obviously meet musicians, but we've also thought about, do we have certain studios that we partner with? So if you're going to Mexico City and you're like, oh, I really want to get in the studio, or I really just want to be around like-minded people, is there a hub that we can provide as you travel around and have that on the map? Because as you know, Element is based off of the map. So are there certain locations
It's a beautiful
that are
map.
like...
It looks so good when you scroll around and you're looking at all the different countries and it says like search in this area. There's 94 people in this area and you're in like, it's so cool.
It's pretty fun. So we're like, maybe we do hubs. Maybe there are certain like meetup locations where people can just have a safe space to go when they're traveling.
Gathering spaces, like those places you can go to where they welcome you.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm so glad you're mentioning, because something else that I've been talking about a lot recently is that in that same way that we lost our sense of like culture and we had to look outward from our cities to find that, we also lost our sense of community within those cities and the gathering spaces. As we like diverged heavily from religion, we stopped going to church. And the importance of church was that you gather with a community and you become a village based on that community. And we kind of like, we don't do that anywhere in most places anymore. I'm sure that's different for other cultures. But having those spaces, those studios where you can be like, like you can book this studio and you can just bring people and you can collaborate with people.
Right.
And maybe those studios even have like, depending on what kind of studio you go to, they have translators, people that can be the in-betweens, you know? That's really cool. Oh, that's so cool. That's so great to hear that you guys are like working on so much to like move things
One
forward.
of my favorite stories is we launched the app in Spanish in Medellin, and we got to go to Comuna Trece, which, if everybody is unfamiliar, I was at the time, is like, used to be not a great area. But there's so much talent there.
Wow.
There's a lot of like street performers in Colombia.
Because it was very afflicted by like the drug war and like all that going on. So it was down bad for a while.
We met some awesome people there, but obviously they don't make a lot of money and they don't really even have computers, some of them. But we would watch them. We're like, wow, you guys are so talented. We invited them to our party. We're like, get on Element. And they can do that. They have cell phones, but then it's a little bit harder per country. We're realizing like what the onboarding process is. But for them, we were like, dude, this community is amazing. We were thinking about partnering with other, you know, like Guitar Center, places that are trying to give back to communities and have Element studios. This has been like put on hold at the moment.
I mean, that's huge.
But if we can like bring people, and all you have to do is scan your app to get access to this studio, and we can provide this studio to communities that otherwise wouldn't be online collaborating. One of my favorite stories was one of the boys there. He texted me on the app and he's like, I don't leave this neighborhood. I'm now like FaceTiming a producer in Guadalajara. And I would have never done that. And so those are some of the connections that are like most heartfelt, but also I think provide us a lot of opportunity of what is the extension in real life that we can give back. Because community us is, you're nothing without a community. There's no company that does well, or people in general like don't do well without a sense of community. So that's always at like the
human
core of
need.
what we do.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh, that's so beautiful. And to hear about different countries too, it's really cool, because we forget. I feel like everybody just forgets that there's so many places that are super undeveloped, or like you said, emerging countries or emerging places that it reminds me, and I'm sure it reminds other creatives as well, that art and what it means to be a creative and be an artist, it's something that you in any situation you would have found your way to that. Because if we can find kids and find even young adults that are doing it despite every other circumstance that they've experienced, because it wasn't hard for me to find art and be like, I want to do this, and my family's like, yeah, you should do it. That sounds like cool. I hope you find a job, but like do it. It's fun. Out there, it's probably like the weirdest thing for a kid to start doing. It's like, I want to be an artist. It's like, we don't even have like.
When there's no path,
we're barely
for it
surviving.
Even,
I don't even know. They don't even go to concerts. Like they don't even know what it's like to be at a concert, and they're still finding art within wherever they are. accessibility. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's
100%.
it. That's beautiful. That's so awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you guys for sharing that and
Of course,
being here to share that. So, getting towards the end of it, and I just want to again share that it's beautiful to see what you're doing. I'm always going to wish the best for it. Can't wait to get back on the app and, keep doing the thing. A few things from both of you,
Mm-hmm.
if you could be together or individually, whatever you guys want to do. To end off the episode, what I would want is first, if there's anything we should be aware of, anything should be looking out for, any ways that we can support as an audience, how to get this thing, pushing it forward in whatever way we can. And then last thing, words of wisdom, anything that you can share with us to that we can take. Anything
That's a
that
look of panic.
Not so wise here.
you guys
We
have
didn't
been
prepare for that question.
you both have been dropping so many gems, so don't worry, you got it. But yeah, anything you could drop off with us so
Sure.
that we can go into our days.
Yeah. In terms of just like staying tuned and what to look out for, you talked about the writing camp. So that EP with those 9 songs is coming out December 2nd and will be on all streaming platforms. Some of the singles came out already. Some of your singles came out already. So those are on Spotify already, just under Element.
Yes.
EP drops on the 2nd, and then the documentary will drop sometime after that.
Sometime
TBD, stay tuned.
Hey, it's coming, and you're gonna.
Oh, it's done, and it's
you're
great.
gonna love it, I promise.
Anyone who's at the event Friday will get a little sneak peek, but it'll come out after the EP. And then in terms of Element, you can follow us on socials, really any social, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just _Element. And we've got a lot of exciting things coming. We're actually revamping the app a little bit, so check back in a couple weeks, a couple months. It'll be different, but making some good updates there. And if you know musicians who should be part or interested, they can apply or just reach out to us directly. We're always like down to connect with more people and spread the Element gospel.
Nice. Yeah, don't forget to get my Orlando peeps on it for sure.
Yes.
Words of wisdom.
Damn. I love that. You both are so very wise. You've been so awesome this whole show. You got it. I promise.
Well, I
no
mean,
pressure.
obviously,
No pressure.
to wrap it back, I think like just being curious is one of our values as a company. So anybody that wants to join our crew, our kind of values are be human, be brave, be curious, and be smart. The curiosity for us is how we started this entire company.
Yes.
Outside of the insight that Leslie shared about finding the musicians in Brazil, we just, and kind of tying it back to also how do we make connections. There was a week during the pandemic, we would just Zoom people from Africa. Like, hey, how's your day? What are you doing in Africa? Just trying to learn. And for us, the curiosity is always what's going to keep everything moving forward. And your network, literally, as they say, is your net worth. So that's what Element is. I mean, just as big a part of any industry is your network, right? And if we can provide access to musicians around the world, we just know the music industry will be so much better off for it. And the fans will enjoy the music more and everything will be bigger and better. So we will do our best to continue to fill those gaps. But I think everything that we do stems from a place of curiosity and just meeting people around the world.
Beautiful.
Different perspective.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's
so
hard
awesome.
to follow. No, I guess it would be in the most like generic way, kind of to like trust the process. Like we're trying to get better at like actually like reflecting and appreciate like the moments. But if like 2 years ago we hadn't even started work on the app yet, so like who knew we would be here? And it does come from, I think, like being really curious, always learning, and just having the curiosity to say like what could be next, but also just trusting the process. Like if you are doing the work, if you are putting in the time, if you are being curious, if you are always learning, like there is going to be a path forward. So trust that.
Yes.
Cut and see.
Perfect. That was perfect. You guys, you're so worried for no reason. That was beautiful. Oh my gosh. That was great. Thank you guys for watching. I apprate everybody. And
Thank
you.
It's
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Hey,
Yeah.
this is what
really
I live
cool.
for. I'm telling you right now, this is what I live for. So thank you guys. Thank you.
We appreciate
Appreciate
it.
the time.
Woo. Cut.
Cut.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, that's fun. It's so cool to hear more in depth as to what you guys are like into, because